Turnpike. You can see off in the distance, let's see, where's the Sherfy? Sherfy Farm is off in the distance. And then Jake's going to orient us right here in the area of the Trossel Farm and talk a bit about Dan Sickles and the action that occurred here on the afternoon of July the 2nd, 1863.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Jim, and hope you all are enjoying these videos. I've been watching them all day, so this has been fantastic. So I'm going to do something that's a little bit different than what you've been seeing most of the day. But we'll talk a little bit about exactly what happens here with Dan Sickles. But I'm not going to be focusing so much on the troop movements, what happens here. We're going to focus pretty specifically on Dan Sickles' wounding, what happens to him. I am the Director of Interpretation at the National Museum of Civil War Medicine, and there is no better Civil War medicine story at Gettysburg than the story of Dan Sickles and his leg. Yeah. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So this position here, the Trossel Farm, this is where the wounding takes place. And we have a monument right over here to Major General Daniel Sickles that kind of documents the fact that happened in this farmyard. So Dan Sickles is here in the early evening of July 3rd, about 6 o'clock. All around him, this is falling apart. He has moved his unit, the 3rd Corps, up to this position, up onto this little hilltop here, and it has fallen apart. And so as the units of the 3rd Corps are beginning to fall back after a series of attacks, Sickles is trying to hold things together. And that's where we are, where the situation is at 6 o'clock.
So one of chaos.
One of absolute chaos. And the situation here in this farmyard is chaos as well, not only because of all of the sweep of the battle occurring around here, but also because this position is being directly under fire from Confederate artillery that is coming in from Seminary Ridge, so out on the other side, the trees in the distance out there.
1,200 yards from where we are.
Yep, so we have not only Confederate artillery shells being fired over here and exploding all around, we also have solid shot that is bouncing its way across the field here. Now, this position in particular is kind of an interesting one when it comes to artillery and the impact of artillery at this moment in the battle, because this place was where anything that is being fired at the crest of the ridge, anything that misses the crest, is continuing and landing right here. And that is ultimately what's going to happen to Dan Sickles. His 3rd Corps headquarters, his little coterie of orderlies and staff officers here, they are not the target of this artillery barrage that is coming in here. They are merely the overshoot of what is this artillery that's coming in. So there's a staff officer who writes about this area, kind of gives it a description at this point. He says, quote, "It was too hot for a Corps headquarters, not so much from fire directed at that point as on account of high shots coming over the crest and centering here." So that is what's happening as Dan Sickles is trying to figure out what the heck is going on, trying to hold his 3rd Corps together after just a series of pummeling assaults against him. So that's where we're going to leave the tactical situation here. So that's where we're at. It's chaos here. Things are really falling apart. Instead, we're going to switch over to what happens to Dan Sickles. So Dan Sickles is on his horse. He's in this farmyard. And his horse is going to be we can probably tell where the horse is facing when he is wounded. Okay. It is facing towards the Confederate artillery, because what ends up happening is one of these solid shots, this 12-pound cannonball, comes bounding across the fields out there towards us and is going to miss Sickles' horse, running actually parallel to his horse, and almost rip off Sickles' right leg. And so he is losing this leg, almost losing this leg. It's ripped open. His pants are hanging there. The surprising thing about this is that Sickles says he doesn't feel it. He doesn't feel anything. And that's like one of the big questions. It's likely adrenaline. Okay. You can imagine what's going on here with the chaos. He's trying to keep things together. This battle has been going on. He's dealing with all the consequences of his decisions. He doesn't feel it. So he describes what he feels years later. He says, quote, "I never knew I was hit. I ran my hand down the leg of my high top boot, and pulling it out, I was surprised to see it dripping with blood. Soon I noticed the leg would not perform its usual function. Then I was conscious of approaching weakness." So he's starting to feel, he's looking down at his leg, he's realizing the situation that he's facing, and he's being let down from his horse. He is able to get down onto the ground.
Okay.
He's going to be assisted over to the barn over behind the camera, and then you're going to rest him up against the barn.
Can you get a quick shot of that, maybe?
Yep. So you can see it. We're not too far away there. So he's going to be resting up against the barn. They're going to drag him over there. And now all the while, as they're doing that, there are continuously the Confederate artillery is pouring in here. So this is so as they get him off the horse, he is losing a lot of blood. I mean, he's bleeding everywhere. He says his boot is full of blood, and so he immediately is trying to come up with a tourniquet.
Right, he needs to staunch the blood.
He needs to staunch the flow of blood, and so he and some of the orderlies that are helping him down from the horse are going to use a strap from his saddle, and they're going to wrap up his leg. The wound itself goes from just above the knee down below to down basically just above his foot. The bone is just ripped apart by this solid shot. And so they're going to put that tourniquet on him, makeshift tourniquet on him, on his thigh, on his right thigh, and they're going to try to staunch the flow of blood. They are not able to do it. The wound is so severe that, and the nature of where that wound takes place means that it is going to continue to lose blood. So that is what he's going to be facing. He's going to get increasingly weak. But all through this, it's pretty surprising that he is able to hold his crap together, because you know, imagine the pain of that. Sure. And this is where almost everyone that sees him at this point says it's kind of surprising how well he's able to keep this together, considering the nature of his injury.
That's almost part of the ideal, though, right? I mean, for kind of the masculinity of the period, the manliness, like that's part of the ideal for a leader to be in complete control at all times.
Absolutely, he is able to do that to a T.
Okay. Yeah. So he embodies the ideal.
He embodies the ideal, exactly right. So the wound is of such a serious nature that almost everyone, the staff officers, the orderlies that are here, look at the wound and are like, B's not going to make it. Okay. They think that he's losing so much blood, they think he is going to succumb. This is going to be a mortal wound. But they do want to evacuate him out of here. They want to get him out of the area of this shelling that's coming in, and so they're left with a decision to make that kind of gets to Civil War medical evacuation. Because there's so much artillery fire coming in here, they find it going to probably be difficult to get an ambulance up here. Okay. And so they're initially thinking we got to stretcher him back towards the main Union line, back away from the fighting.
Is that typical?
And this is the debate. This is always the debate on these battlefields, is how close can ambulances get, because that's the fastest and most stable way of getting you there. Okay. And so ultimately they do get an ambulance up here, they put him onto it, and they're going to take him back towards the rear. And this is where the next controversy. Sickles is so full of controversy. And this is the controversy in the wake of the wounding. Is, did Sickles smoke the cigar? Sure. And there's sources go both ways, and there's debates that go on for pages and pages and books about Gettysburg. But ultimately, does it really matter? Probably not. What matters is that he embodies the ideal. Right. Everyone that writes about him says that he is cool, calm, and collected as he's being taken off the field. So he's going to be evacuated back to the other side of the Round Tops, to the Daniel Schaefer farm. Okay. 3rd Corps Field Hospital. They're going to operate on him. They're going to remove the leg.
Is this still on the 2nd?
This is still on the 2nd. Okay. This is all within. We want to keep this in as soon as you can amputate. You want to amputate when they make that decision.
That higher likelihood of survival.
Higher likelihood of survival. Okay. If you have a primary amputation, first amputation performed within 24 to 48 hours of the original injury, that's your best bet. That's your highest likelihood of surviving.
And since I got you here, Jake, I gotta throw this out there. I mean, so tell us the most I guess inaccurate description of a Civil War amputation. What's the biggest myth surrounding amputation? Because I hear this a lot, so just spell it for us.
Absolutely. So no one bit bullets in Civil War field hospitals. 95% of surgeries done during the Civil War are done under anesthesia. 95%. Dan Sickles included. Okay. He's going to be put under chloroform for his amputation. They perform a circular amputation, very similar to methodology that they use today for amputations. The surgery goes well. He survives. They take him back to Washington. He goes on to live a good long life,
shaping the memory of the battle.
Shaping the memory of the battle, getting the Medal of Honor, and his leg goes on too. He is going to donate his leg, have it shipped and preserved at the Army Medical Museum in Washington, D.C., and then very famously, he will be one of the veterans that will go back to visit his leg.
We have an image of this, do we not?
We do have an image of Sickles' leg, if you want to hold that up, Jim. So this is how they would do it. The Army Medical Museum would preserve these. They'd strip away all the flesh, and you would leave the bone, and that would show as an example of what Civil War injuries were like. Sure. Sickles is not alone in going to visit his missing limb.
Okay.
This is actually something that is quite common, that of soldiers who survived their wounds, whose amputated limbs were sent to the Army Medical Museum by their doctors. We even know of one in particular, one soldier who wanted his leg back.
Okay.
Did not get it. It
Okay,
was
for
federal property.
displaying the home, I guess.
Federal property.
Yeah. Okay.
Is,
really?
is what they claim.
Federal property.
Yep. They
Okay.
You signed over your body to the Army. That
So
was
again,
their
this is
view.
going to be used really for future knowledge.
Yes,
to
for
some-
medical
yeah.
medical study,
Medical research,
and
yes.
also to tell the history of the war.
Sure.
Medical and surgical history will be compiled using specimens like this to tell how they did surgical amputations, other
Artifacts of the
operations.
battle. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, this case here is one of the better known medical stories here at Gettysburg, but it is illustrative of a lot of what happens over the rest of the battlefield. I mean, amputation is the most common surgery performed during the war. You see the battle going on here in this yard over how do we evacuate Sickles from the field. That's the same thing that goes on for average soldiers. How close can you get ambulances? And that matters because we've got some
artillery
period
fire like
accurate
that,
artillery
yeah.
fire going on here. That debate about how close is too close, how do you quickly get patients from the battlefield, that is the case for soldiers all over this battlefield.
I guess what's remarkable too is, again, like one of these myths is that this is, the Middle Ages of medicine, but in fact, it seems like there's all these elements that seem, I don't want to use the word modern, but they seem strikingly modern. Again, pardon the specific word, but there's a lot of innovation going on between 62 and 63, right, with the Army and how
Absolutely.
they're addressing these issues and how they're increasing the survivability of these really horrific wounds.
Yeah, that is a testament to the work of a joke I call him the patron saint of the National Museum of Civil War Medicine is Jonathan Letterman.
Sure.
He's the medical director of the Army of the Potomac. He's here at Gettysburg. He's actually dealing with some real frustrations at this particular battle because there is he designed as part of his overhaul of Army medicine. He designs this idea of an ambulance corps and a reserve of ambulances that could be used in these really big set-piece battles where you have these massive engagements where you have tens of thousands of casualties. He wanted that ambulance corps reserve to be able to come in, quickly evacuate patients to the rear. With the situation between himself and George Meade, ultimately Meade orders that those ambulances are kept at a distance as to not clog up logistics to get everything that they need up here to fight the battle, be that troops, be that additional ammunition, food, that sort of thing. And so ultimately that means that here at this battle, Letterman, his system that he creates kind of breaks down a bit because he doesn't have the ability to as quickly evacuate patients. But all of the people, all of the personnel are here and are trained and are able to improvise to make this system work, even though it doesn't have all of the pieces that it really needs to function flawlessly. And that's, the no plan ever meets,
especially in a situation like this.
Exactly. It's
Unparalleled.
never going to survive contact with the enemy. And so that's ultimately what Letterman is going to do. No matter what engagement he's in, he's always going to have to deal with circumstances that are outside of his control. But ultimately, here at Gettysburg, that system is going to work for the Union Army. They're going to be able to quickly evacuate their patients and give some of the best medical care that you see in the Civil War up to this point.
Fabulous. Well, again, Jake, Director of Interpretation, National Museum of Civil War Medicine, and again, please follow Jake through Winning History, and then you have a new endeavor, is that correct?
Yes, new endeavor that we launched just yesterday on July 1.
Congratulations.
Called Pennsylvania in the Civil War, or Penn Civil War. So if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you can find us at Penn Civil War, and we're penncivilwar.com. So it's a new project with a couple of other young historians from Pennsylvania. We're excited to tell stories of the Keystone State and their role in the Civil War.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Jake. We deeply appreciate it, and thank you all. We're going to have one more segment today with Dr. Joe Rizzo concerning the 8th Virginia